Every generation has its voices. Some rise, some fade, and some leave behind echoes that never die. This is the story of Cherrelle, the R&B princess who lit up the 80s, faced the storms of the 90s, and still carries a legacy that refuses to disappear. But this isn't just a story of hit records and stage lights, it's about survival in an industry that crowns artists one day and forgets them the next. Cherrelle's journey is proof that talent doesn't always guarantee superstardom, but sometimes survival itself is the true legacy. Early life and roots. Before she was Cherrelle, she was Cherrelle Ann Norton, born in Los Angeles on October 13, 1958. She didn't come from celebrity parents or a music dynasty. Her beginnings were simple. Childhood was spent between Los Angeles and Detroit, two worlds shaping her identity. On one hand, the glitz of Hollywood and the booming West Coast entertainment industry. On the other, Detroit, the home of Motown, soul grit, and raw street culture. This mix gave her voice both polish and edge, elegance layered with attitude. Her nickname, Cherrelle, wasn't a stage invention. It started at her day job in a bank, when her boss jokingly teased her by saying, "Cherrelle, you're late." That playful nickname stuck, and it eventually became her star identity. But behind the playful name was someone grinding in the shadows, singing background vocals, sharpening her craft, waiting for her shot. First breakthrough, Clarence Avant and Tabu Records. That shot came in the early 1980s. A demo tape landed in the hands of Clarence Avant, the legendary founder of Tabu Records, often called the godfather of black music. Avant wasn't just any executive. He had a sharp ear for talent and a network that stretched across the industry. When he heard Cherrelle's voice, playful, sultry, confident, yet vulnerable, he signed her on the spot. This signing introduced her to producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. At the time, they weren't yet the icons who would redefine pop and R&B with Janet Jackson. But with Cherrelle, they were experimenting, sculpting their signature sound, and she became one of their first muses. Fragile, 1984. A new voice emerges. Her debut album, Fragile, dropped in 1984. It was fresh, funky, and confident. But it was one track in particular that became her breakout, I Didn't Mean to Turn You On. This wasn't just a song, it was a statement. Sassy, flirty, unapologetic. It stood out in an era where many female artists were pushed into polished, safe roles. The track cracked the R&B top 10 and even crossed into pop territory. It was so impactful that Robert Palmer covered it in 1985, and years later Mariah Carey revived it for a new generation. But no matter how many versions came, it was Cherrelle's original that carried the spark. High Priority, 1985. The duet that defined a decade. Her second album, High Priority, arrived in 1985. Once again backed by Jam and Lewis, it solidified her reputation. But what changed her trajectory forever was a duet. Saturday Love with Alexander O'Neal. This wasn't just another R&B single, it became a cultural ritual. A song that defined weekends, relationships, and 80s radio playlists. Their chemistry was undeniable, both in the studio and on stage. Fans couldn't get enough. The track hit number 2 on the R&B charts, cracked the UK top 10, and turned Cherrelle into a global name. By the mid-80s, she wasn't just an R&B hopeful anymore, she was an R&B star. Affair, 1988, the peak of power. Then came her masterpiece, Affair, 1988. A concept album built around love, betrayal, and heartbreak. It gave her the haunting ballad, Everything I Miss at Home, which became her first #1 R&B single. The vulnerability in her voice, soft, aching, confessional, showed a different side of Cherrelle. The title track, Affair, also climbed the charts, proving she could blend storytelling with mainstream appeal. And of course, her duets with Alexander O'Neal continued to dominate. Their second major hit, Never Knew Love Like This, 1987, became another timeless anthem. By this point, Cherrelle had carved out a unique lane. She wasn't Whitney with powerhouse vocals. She wasn't Janet with choreographed pop dominance. She wasn't Anita Baker with deep, mature soul. She was street smart, sultry, playful, giving R&B a new kind of intimacy. The Storm, 1990s shift. But the music industry changes quickly. By the early 90s, the polished Jam & Lewis sound was being overshadowed by New Jack Swing and hip-hop soul. Mary J. Blige, SWV, and later Brandy and Monica were reshaping R&B for a younger audience. Suddenly, the sound Cherrelle helped pioneer felt dated to labels. In 1991, she tried to reinvent with The Woman I Am, working with Narada Michael Walden, the hitmaker behind Whitney Houston's biggest tracks. On paper, it was perfect. In reality, it lacked the Jam & Lewis chemistry that defined her. The album underperformed. Her independent release, The Right Time, 1999, came at a time when Destiny's Child was dominating and R&B was merging with hip-hop. Without major label backing, her project barely made a dent. The problem wasn't talent, it was timing. The sound had shifted, and the industry had moved on. The whispers and rumors. As her chart presence faded, the rumors grew. Fans speculated endlessly. Was her career held back by label politics? Did her close bond with Alexander O'Neal hurt her solo identity? Was she tied to industry drama through her cousin Pebbles, who managed TLC during their financial controversies? Some whispers went further, linking her romantically to powerful but dangerous figures in the 1980s. But the truth? None of it was ever proven. In reality, Cherrelle's decline had less to do with scandal and more to do with an unforgiving industry that constantly demanded reinvention. Legacy: a voice that refused to fade. Despite industry hurdles, Cherrelle never disappeared. Through the 2000s and 2010s, she became a staple of the old-school R&B touring circuit. Alongside Alexander O'Neal, Ready for the World, and other 80s stars, she filled concert halls with fans eager to relive the soundtrack of their youth. Her performances weren't just nostalgia trips. They were proof that her voice, charisma, and stage presence remained untouched. Even in 2024, she was still headlining shows, commanding the mic with the same sultry energy that made her a star decades earlier. Influence: the blueprint she left behind. Cherrelle's impact went beyond her chart numbers. Her duets with Alexander O'Neal created a template for male-female R&B collaborations that future artists would chase but rarely match. Her playful phrasing and blend of sass with vulnerability influenced not just Janet Jackson's early delivery, but countless R&B singers who wanted to balance toughness with softness. And songs like Saturday Love and I Didn't Mean to Turn You On remain fixtures on old-school playlists, radio countdowns, and DJ sets. A reminder that she shaped the soundtrack of an era. Cherrelle may not have reached Whitney Houston's superstardom or Janet Jackson's global empire, but she doesn't need to, because her story is about something just as powerful: survival. She endured the highs of stardom, the lows of being sidelined, and decades of industry whispers. Yet she's still here, still performing, still remembered. In the end, not every legend wears a crown. Some legends survive by simply refusing to fade. Cherrelle may have been underrated in her time, but today she stands as proof that survival itself is a legacy.